All right, it feels like the offseason has officially begun with the first blockbuster trade of the offseason yesterday afternoon. The Suns acquiring Brad Beal for Chris Paul, who essentially is going to be waived, maybe traded, right? But I think the initial shock around the league and NBA Twitter and the fans was like, that was it? That's all it took? A couple second rounders, some swaps? The price was that low? What does that exactly say about Brad Beal and that contract moving forward? I guess Miami was trying to acquire him as well. That no trade clause limited his value. There's no doubt about it. But, honestly, I think Brad Beal is finally in his natural position as the number 3 option or player on a championship contender. The problem is, for the majority of his career in Washington, he had been treated as the number 1 guy, the franchise player, right? As John Wall and his injuries took its toll and he was finally out of there, it was Brad Beal's organization. He was certainly paid that way, right? And that is the issue. Like, Brad Beal has all the tools to play the role the Suns need him to. Reallocate his energy to the defensive end somewhat, right? Play off the ball and just play the way he's that talented. He's that skilled and physically, he's a big power guard. So he's fully capable at 29 years old. Will he play the way they need him to play? Probably not. Probably not. Right. That would be my feeling on it. And again, I go back to him being treated as a franchise player and a first option the majority of his career. I think it's very hard for a player to spend this long in the league and be treated that way. What happens is they grow accustomed to not doing the dirty work and not having to do the little things because they're the franchise player, right? Protect the franchise player. And so to be bumped down to that third role and kind of be like, hey man, you may have to defend the best player tonight. We need you to get down and get that loose ball, box out, right? The dirty work stuff. He's just at this point not accustomed to doing it. Again, he's fully capable of doing it. Do I think he will? Probably not, right? And I think in an ideal world, what you say if you're a Suns fan or you're within the Suns organization, you say, okay, well, when you look at Beal, Book, and Durant, all 3 of them can kind of take a step back offensively because they've got 3 top-tier offensive weapons, and they can all kind of distribute more energy defensively and play as a team, right? That's in an ideal world, but again, that's just not how things work out. We've seen these big threes and these trios be put together over and over again to unsavory. No, just, not meeting expectations, right? And so I think the reality is, I think it's on Book. I think in order for them to work, obviously they're going to need to stay healthy and they're going to need to find some way to add some depth. The truth is they're all 60-game players. All 3 of them average about 60 games a season, right? If God forbid they all miss those 20 at the same time. But I digress. Let's just assume they stay healthy and they find some ring chasers and all that. In order for the chemistry and for them to play the right way and utilize their talents the right way, it starts with Devin Booker. Why do I say that? Because he is the alpha of the team. We know KD ain't, right? Brad Beal, it proven it wasn't. You weren't that in Washington, as much as people wanted to tell us. Book is the alpha. He's the youngest player. He's the youngest player of the 3, but he has to set the tone of, hey, I'm going to sacrifice. I'm going to pick up the best offensive player defensively. I'm going to hit the glass, right? I'm going to set hard screens. And if he can set the tone and be the leader, I think those other 2 will follow. And this huge risk from this new Suns owner could pay off, right? Ayton. I guess Ayton is the other question. Are they going to flip him for depth? And, here's the thing with Ayton. Monty Williams is a beloved figure in the NBA, right? And you saw the bag Detroit was willing to give him, how respected he is around the league. And it was so well documented, the issue between Ayton and Monty Williams. And I think behind closed doors, within the NBA, it's a close-knit community, I think if Monty has kind of said like, hey, this kid ain't it, like I don't even know if he likes to hoop type of thing. And I'm not quoting him. I think behind closed doors, the league the word is out like, yo, Ayton, I don't think he likes to play ball that much. And he's sitting with this max contract. And so I'm not sure how easily that contract is flipped. Never mind Brad Beal's no trade clause that moves to the Suns. I think that is the big kicker, because you can sit and say, hey, they barely gave up anything to get Brad Beal, but moving forward, they've lost, I think, a lot of their flexibility, because that no trade clause is the reason they got him for nothing. And it's the same reason that they're going to be stuck with him when he's making almost $60 million per year on the wrong side of 30. So it's an intriguing move. It's exciting. You understand why you'd make the swing. I know a lot of people today are saying it doesn't make sense, but I don't know how many other options there were for the Suns. And so it's possible, but I think it starts with Devin Booker being the leader of this new big three out in the desert. The kind of a little podcast version here, episode for y'all today. I'm going to jump around since there's so many topics. Let's talk Warriors. It is announced today. I don't know if it's official, right? But Draymond is opting out, and he's looking to extend 3 years, which would line up with when Steph's contract ends. He's going to play with Steph and ride it out. What is the contract? 3 years. The immediate thing is about 25 per, right? 3 for 75 seems like a logical point where they could meet in the middle, right? The deal he just opted out of was 27. But it sounds like they're on the same page. It doesn't initially, when it was first announced, the Warriors are preparing for Draymond to opt out. It was like, oh, is this a leverage play? Is this clutch? Are the Warriors going to let Draymond just set the market and see what it is? And now this is where Clutch would step in and maybe get some sort of unreasonable contract from a team that doesn't make sense and force the Warriors' hand. But more likely, it looks like they're on the same page moving forward. They're going to meet in the middle, and Draymond is going to lock in for the rest of this Steph Curry era with the Warriors. So there's that. The other official news was Mike Dunleavy Jr. is now officially the new general manager of the Golden State Warriors. Done. Go look up when he gets thrown out. I think it was year 2 for him in Golden State, 2 or 3. I'll never forget it. He was along the baseline, and because Dunleavy was a very stoic, quiet kid when he came out of Duke, the number 3 pick. I wasn't mad. I ain't gonna front. When he came out, I was excited. I thought he was the pick to make. Obviously, he didn't live up to expectations, especially for the Warriors, who did in that era, though, to be honest with you. But he was a very stoic, quiet, buttoned-up kid, and there was this game where he got thrown out, and he ripped his jersey off, and he was cursing up a storm, and it was just so startling to see Dunleavy in that light. It's good to know he's got that fire, right? But, what's the saying? Those that can't do, teach, right? There's all sorts of sayings that way. It makes sense. I talked a little bit about this previously when we anticipated Dunleavy getting this job, that his skill is the talent, the eye talent, right? He can spot talent and sense when he gets around these guys, because it's not just about the talent. It's also about sensing and reading character, reading the room and reading who these kids are. Right. And it makes sense that Dunleavy, that would be a strength of his, because while, again, his career, I'm sure he'd admit it wasn't what he wanted it to be once he at least got to the pros. His dad was a longtime NBA coach, Mike Dunleavy Sr., right? So he's been around the game and the professional level of the game for a long time. And then all the way up, he was a top prospect in high school, a number 1 recruit to Duke, the number 3 pick. He's been around the elites for a long time when it comes to basketball. And you would imagine that he can smell, his smell test for guys that have the juice and have the talent and the puzzle pieces is probably pretty strong. So I think it's going to work out. I think it's a good move. Kirk Lacob, Joe's son, the optics of it would have been bad. It would have been bad, and I think they understood that. Another bit of news is there's a lot of stuff trickling out now, right? We're a couple of days away from the draft. The latest bit of draft news from the Warriors is the Warriors are interested in trading up for Derek Lively Jr. What do you know? Listen, I may not have sources, but you can check my resume, check my track record, right? When it comes to these things. Hey, we all have misses, right? And all I can do is give my opinion, but I'm usually on point. And I said that Derek Lively Jr. was going to probably be that target. The question is, how far do you have to move up, and can you move up? The Indiana Pacers have the number 7 pick on the block. that would feel like high enough to get him. You'd feel safe that Lively would still be there at 7. What would you have to give up? They want a wing. Kuminga fits, right? Now you're dealing with salaries. You might have to give up Patrick Baldwin Jr. What does work, I believe, is Kuminga, PBJ for Daniel Tice in the number 7 pick. Now, Daniel Tice, what do they say? He's got a little water in the basement, right? He doesn't quite have the bounce and lift he once had in his legs. He's on the wrong side of 30, but he's still a serviceable player that fits the Warrior system, right? Like a Jonas Jerebko, or a stretch 4 guy, has a little bit of rim protection. I think he could be of use, and then you'd have that 7th pick. So it'd essentially be your 2 young forwards, Kuminga and Patrick Baldwin Jr., for a veteran stretch big in Tice, and then I'm assuming Derek Lively the second, a true center. Just a thought. Those are the rumors that are swirling around. I'm going to go live here at some point during the draft. It might be on Patreon. It might be here on YouTube. I haven't decided if I wanted to make that private yet or not. But regardless, you guys will have my take the next day on what ends up happening. I feel like it's going to be one of them drafts, man. I'll leave you with this. I just did I combined 3 scouting reports into one to try to cramp this in here for these final days. I just did Jaime Jaquez, Jordan Hawkins, and Brandon Podzinski, the Santa Clara product. 3 non-bigs that I took a look at this week on my Patreon. That is out now. But as we sit right now, there's so many rumors as far as moving up and who it could be and trading out of the spot. Derek Lively, the center from Duke. This is my top 3 realistic gets. Chris Murray, Keagle's twin brother, right? The doppelganger at Iowa. He's 22 years old, right? And then Jordan Hawkins, the best player on the national champion UConn Huskies, is just a generational system fit. If you haven't looked him up or you didn't see any of that tournament play, they're literally running Warrior sets for him, the way he can shoot on the move. I think despite him not maybe being a big body that we're looking for, the system fit would be very hard to pass up if he was still on the board at 19. I'm not sure he will be. I think the Heat, the Lakers, there's going to be somebody that's going to swoop him up. But Lively, Murray, and Hawkins are kind of my big board 3 for where we sit at 19, which is very hard to say when you're at 19. It's one thing if you're at 7 or 8 and you can kind of give your list, right? At 19, you just don't know who's going to be there. But again, you can check all my prospect breakdowns on my Patreon. The link is in the description. Sounds like Draymond is going to be he's going to finish his career a Warrior. The question is, are we going to keep any of these young guys? Is it going to be for a vet, or is it going to be for another young guy that fits the team better? We only got a couple of days until I think we figure all this out. I think there's going to be a lot more moving and shaking around the league. You're hearing Zion's on the table. Now, as far as the top of the board goes, Wembanyama, Scoot, Brendan Miller. Listen, I understand that if you have the number 1 pick, you have to take Wembanyama. It's kind of like the Grey Gode draft. We've seen these drafts in the past, even the Zion draft. I said the same thing with Ja, but there are these consensus number 1 picks where you're in a position where you have to take them, right? I understand that. However, if it were me, give me Scoot Henderson every day of the week. Out of those 3, when you talk about can't miss prospects, and apparently Steph Curry feels the same way, because there was footage of he and Scoot Henderson working out at Stanford, and apparently Steph wants to mentor Scoot. And so, you know how our minds work. We're immediately going to be like, well, that's the player they want to trade up for. We're trying to move up to the 2nd spot to get Scoot Henderson. Now, positionally, it doesn't make a ton of sense with where the team's at right now, but it's very intriguing. It's very intriguing because I think he is the number 1 prospect on my personal big board. So, maybe that is what's happening. Or is Scoot Henderson signed to a shoe deal? Is Steph courting him to Under Armour, perhaps? Because let's not kid ourselves. That has a lot to do with some of these connections. So that's another interesting little tidbit. But yeah, draft Thursday, and it's going to be a fun one. As always, hit that like, share, and subscribe. I'm out, y'all.